Okay, so what do we have so far? Let's see. Okay, your research questions. Let's review those. When you get a chance, if you could upload these to Google Drive, so I can also make comments directly to here, so you can, and that way too you don't lose anything. I don't want you to, because it happens sometimes if your computer crashes or whatever. So it's a lot safer keeping it uploaded here. So let's see, research. All right, so how are you planning? You're going to divide it up into intervention and non-intervention strategies?
Yes.
Right? So intervention strategies, you're going to talk about drilling. What else?
Explicit explanation and emphasizing.
And I'm sorry, what was the third one?
The third one I haven't.
Okay.
Right.
Do you have an idea though what it's going to be?
More or less.
Okay. Remember, level 3 headings is going to be part of the paragraph. So in this case, just bring this just line up, and it's going to be drilling and then period after. And then period and space. Yeah. Now you might want to be a bit more descriptive in both of your headings, and maybe intentional strategies maybe is okay, but drilling, if you can add a little bit more, just a phrase to be more explicit. Maybe even in interventional strategies, maybe if you can provide maybe just a little bit more
like
text.
a definition.
Not a definition, but just a group of words that's a little bit more specific about what it is, like interventional strategies in the EFO classroom, or something, and drilling, and something about drilling that's a little bit more explicit. All right, so do you have a definition of drilling someplace in your literature review? An expert where they define?
Yes.
Okay. And so is it about repetition then, drilling and repetition? Or I wonder if you should call it repetition. Did you call it repetition or drilling?
Well, in the what I have in the literature is drilling, and then the author explains that it's basically repetition. Make students repeat after the teacher.
Okay. So here you have drilling, making repetitions. Okay, so teacher A uses drilling to correct pronunciation. Okay, now I would use, instead of teacher A, how many teachers are you using? Okay, so I would assign them a pseudonym and use the pseudonym, the fake name, instead of, I think it's a little more personal. So if it's use female, gender specific names, but I would just use the name, and I wouldn't say like teacher John, just say John or whatever name you want to use. Okay. So teacher uses drilling to correct pronunciation when he sees mistakes. Now, in this first example, you're providing evidence, and this is from an observation, right? So from your observations, you have recordings where you should be able, in fact, you should have a transcript from those recordings about what the teacher said. So in this case, and in general, whatever you observed and especially when the teacher says something and the students respond, try to include an example based on your transcripts. That is, a direct quote. The teacher said this and the students responded to this, instead of kind of paraphrasing what it is that you observed. So here, maybe you can provide just a short dialogue. Teacher, Raul said this, and the students responded like this, like the dialogue, to show an example how this teacher corrected pronunciation. Yeah, and just basically what you're saying here. Show like an example. The teacher said this, and they said this. Let's see. Okay. And then you can say teacher, or Raul says that he uses this technique, the one you just showed, because, and then you have another good direct quote, which is good there. So you say students can really realize that, and here I would include, I would put like the date, April 15th, as best I can remember. Teacher uses drilling because he wants. Again, if you can provide a quote, the teacher uses drilling because he wants to make students aware of pronunciation. What did he say?
That is exactly. Well, I paraphrase.
Right, I would just include the quote.
The quote. Okay.
Yeah. And then if you find out that teacher B says the same thing as teacher A, then you can say teacher A agrees with teacher B, so you don't have to include so many quotes, but include the best quotes. So don't always go with one teacher. Look for the teacher that has the best quote, the most interesting quote, and because the quotes really add a lot of good information to your findings. But choose the best ones, and then you can, if the other one agreed, then you can just state that. So this is all evidence, right?
Yes, this is all evidence.
And now your discussion. So drilling is a technique that allows students to raise awareness towards pronunciation by using a rote context. Both teachers are in the same level. This teacher. Are these different? Teacher A uses drilling to improve students' pronunciation. Teacher B practices to make students memorize pronunciation. That's the same, huh? Because the connectors that you're using makes it sound like they're different. As teacher uses this, teacher B practices this. Como son diferentes. But they sound like it's the same. So I would just modify these connectors here. Instead of saying, as teacher A uses this, say teacher A and B use it similarly by helping to improve pronunciation and helping them memorize or something like that. So just modify this one sentence here. And another reason that I like for you to upload here is when we have our tutoring sessions, I can make comments here, and you have the recording you can see. So it's a little bit easier for you, I think, when you go back to listen to the recording that you can actually see here. But now you're going to have to kind of listen and kind of look at the document. So just a suggestion. Now, therefore, teachers, we're on page 1. Also, make sure you number your pages. Maybe they're numbered at the top. Well, whenever you finish your final document, make sure that you have your pages. I think we're on page. I'm not sure what page we're on. Therefore, teachers could use drilling as a mean. Okay. Explicit. So back. Drilling. Alright, so yeah, just add a few more quotes there. And same here, this will be a level 3 heading. And I'll also make sure that the level 3 heading it's indented, just like you have here, period at the end, and then bring this up. Teaching pronunciation through explicit explanation helps students learn. Teacher has stated that he believes pronunciation is supposed to be. Now notice here you have some evidence here about pronunciating words through the context itself, which is kind of related to what you're mentioning up here about in a real context.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking here at the evidence here. You realize the correct way. They don't mention really anything about context. They just say the teacher uses this. They can rule the correct way pronunciate a particular word by making students repeat the words throughout the class and memorize the pronunciation words. All right. So notice here that the evidence doesn't talk too much about context. So again, just make sure look at the evidence. Make sure you just discuss the evidence specifically, and don't mix the evidence with the analysis here, because this sounds like now you're talking about context, and maybe that paragraph that you had above might be modified and maybe moved after this, or you move this up, one of the two. Okay, so just double check that to make sure that you are discussing very specifically the evidence. Likewise, okay, so you understand the words. Okay, so likewise, now you're preparing the reader to say, okay, teacher B says something very similar to teacher A, but teacher B doesn't say anything about the context or real life. It just says students really understand the words. So maybe look for evidence for teacher B that says something about learning pronunciation in context or in the environment or in real authentic situation, something about that to tie in this more to this evidence. For that reason, teacher A explained every reason who is struggling with pronunciation. On one side, teacher uses activity stating that he allows the students to enjoy the activity. On the other side, teacher B uses it because it's a base to make and they don't understand. However, the discrepancy, teacher A makes use of it in each activity. Alright, so notice here, teaching pronunciation with explicit notice the different sounds exist. Alright, so we have a problem with this paragraph is with regard to coherence. Like, choose the one idea that you want to talk about. Make sure that you reflect that here in the topic sentence, and that the supporting sentences very much talk about that one little idea, that one concept. And in this case, teaching pronunciation through explicit explanation helps students. So explicit explanation is like the big topic here. Sometimes I really want to discover the context itself. So here, this doesn't really fit with this. Because this is kind of evidence saying they want the students to learn it within the context, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to teach it explicitly. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? So you want some evidence where it says the teacher says something like, at times I have to explicitly, or I have to tell them pronounce the word. That's explicit instruction. Sometimes I just set the situation and they learn from the situation. That's more in context, maybe more authentic depending on the details. Okay, so be very meticulous. Look at every paragraph and ask yourself: is the evidence that I'm providing, does it address the topic sentence, that one idea? And try not to include anything that doesn't talk about specifically that one idea. Okay. Here we have, for this reason, teacher A made explicit. So likewise, teacher explicit. So the students to really understand the words. So again, look at your evidence and look for words where the teacher says, I teach. I have to sometimes write on the board. Okay, that's an example. Sometimes I have to tell them. Mm-hmm. This is it. So I see here, this is second example. You might find a better piece of text or a quote where they are specifically saying, I write on the board, I write it someplace, something that is an example of explicit instruction, so that you can complement this and talk more directly in terms of that. Maybe this, you can copy and paste and move that up if you're talking about authentic. Right? So maybe this might be better off in the first paragraph where you're talking about authentic and learning. But here's the thing, you're talking about drilling. So my question is drilling more like quote unquote authentic in the context, or is it more like explicit? And so just make sure the idea is how you want to present this information is logical. All right? You have the information here, but I think it's a matter of putting it in a logical order. What makes sense first? Do you want to talk about drilling first? Talk about explicit instruction? Okay. And then talk about maybe authentic instruction or more implicit later? I don't know. But just whatever it is, make sure that it's logical and that you're not mixing the evidence with the discussions as far as the main ideas. Okay? All right. So explicit, explicit, let's go back. So let's take a look. So this is intervention. So drilling, repetition, explicit. Are these two different things? Drilling and explicit, or is drilling a type of explicit?
Yeah, drilling is type of explicit because in explicit explanation you like model the sound.
Okay.
And in drilling you just give the sound and make them repeat.
Okay. So how would you want to present having those two ideas? Do you want to present drilling first, the more like the example of explicit first and then explicit? Or would it make more sense to start off with explicit and then go to the more specific, for example, drilling, and talk about that? What do you think? Explicit first. You see what I mean? It's like explicit, a little more general, but you have data. All right? Results and discussion. Then you go, okay, drilling. Now you're going more specific. Drilling is a type of explicit. You might even say that in the topic sentence. Example of explicit is drilling or repetition, period. See? For example, now you go and talk about drilling. See? All right. So you might consider that, and then, okay, so see what I mean here about how I want you to kind of go through each one of these and just take it paragraph by paragraph. If it helps you to write out those topic sentences first and say, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about, explicit instruction, and then I'm going to talk about drilling, then I'm going to talk about this, right? And I really recommend putting as much as you can here, and then if you have questions, you can ask me right there on the spot instead of waiting for another week. So what I'd like for you to do is really upload everything that you can to Google Drive, and just make notes. It doesn't matter if right now, today or tomorrow, that it's not all neat. Just write out these sentences for you as a guide to help you kind of an outline to say, okay, this is what the order in which I'm going to present my ideas. And then if you want me to look at it, if you're still not sure, if you're not sure about if this should go before this, ask me or come by and see me. But this has to be, I'm stressing a lot the idea of order, making sure that it's clear to you as you're writing where you're going. Because if it's not clear where you're going, then your writing starts to shift and go all over the place and off topic. So yeah, let's try to do that. And if you want me to look at something again, because we're not going to have a tutoring session until next Monday. We don't have class on Thursday. So I'm going to be trying to shuffle around my tutoring sessions on Thursday other days. But come by if we need to have another discussion to look at the order or whatever you have at that point as far as the text, just to make sure that your ideas flow. Right? And that's why I'm really stressed. I'm not looking right now at grammar necessarily. I'm looking at structure, the order, so that it makes sense. So think about how do you want to answer your research questions. What would be the most logical and easiest way for someone who's reading this for the first time to understand the answers? And remember that the reader, this is the first time they're reading this. It's like you've got to lay it out really basic and not too complicated, laid out very simply. this is first, this is, and there's a good reason as to why you're presenting these ideas first, and so on. Okay? Does this make sense about the
Yes.
comments here about the order? And this is just an example. If you later think, okay, well, no, I need to talk about this first, that's fine, but it just has to be logical and easy to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and keep working on that. Upload it to Google Drive. Send me an email if you want me to look at something in there, or come by come by if we need to talk about something. But we need to try to finish by Friday. So
Yes.
I want you to work really hard. I'm trying to get everything together, and if you have something you want me to look at, let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
One more doubt.
Yes.
I added some images to the interview. I have to write a reference for the image.
Images in the literature review. These. And where did you get these?
From internet.
Do you remember the link?
Yes.
Do you know what license it's under? Do you know if it's a Creative Commons license by chance?
I don't remember.
All right. We have to be careful with the images that we use, and I recommend all my students, for any type of image, start with this website that's called Creative Commons Search. And what this allows you to do is you can put in some keywords in, and so you might go back and see if you can find that this image or something that will help you. Maybe it's not this exact image, but something that would work. Type in the keywords here, and you can either select Flickr here or Google Images. You can also, the rest of these are different types of media, but these two are the biggest databases. And leave these checked as they are. Let's see, what's the topic here of your
That's
American English word charts? All right, so American English word charts. And I'll click Flickr. Now what this does is it shows, or it searches all the images under what's called a Creative Commons license, which basically means that you have permission to use these as long as you give the link or you give attribution. You credit this person saying, okay, I got this image from this website or this person. So the idea is that whatever image that you find, and you may have to play around with these search terms, but whatever image you find, yeah, you may not. You click on the image, and from here you select. This one has a lot of description here, a lot of text. Most of them don't have this much. But down here at the bottom, a couple of things. Here, if you want to download the image, you click on this, and it gives you an option to download the image, depending on the size. And you can also select here this box, and this gives you the link, and this is the link that you'll need to include in your paper to give attribution. But if you do this, you don't need the permission from the author to use the image. And so this is a nice search because all of these images are under a Creative Commons license, which you can use. So I would try to do that, and you can also do this with Google Images. You might get more search. So now you have more options. Maybe there's another chart in here that might help you that you might be able to use. But I would recommend doing that, making sure that you include the link. That way you don't have problems with license. Because some of these are under just an all rights reserved, which means that you need permission from the author, and it's a hassle.
So do I include the link in the references? Or?
You can. I would include it at the bottom of this, and just say I would put photo attribution, 2 points, colon, and the link. And that short link. It's a modified short link, so it won't take up much space. But photo attribution, colon, and then the link just below the image. Okay, and then I would even include it in the references. Just have it like as a note underneath each image. But do be careful with that. And And look for this. Maybe this image is under Creative Commons. I don't know, but do check that. And if you have questions or doubts, if I'm not sure, let me know. But just check the license of the images that you want to use.
Okay.
All right. So what else? Anything else?
That's it.
So hang in there. Try to get everything finished by Friday. If we need to have, want me to look at something, let me know, and we'll go from there. I uploaded today as an announcement some information about the abstract, introduction, and conclusion. So for you to take a look about that. The introduction is going to be basically the same type of introduction that we worked on in the applied linguistics course. We want to have a hook. We want to talk about the context or the background of the information, precisely the problem that you are investigating. So essentially, your whole research is based on some problem that you want to investigate. So try to include at least one citation that it addresses the problem, and discuss that in the introduction. And then the last sentence of your introduction is the thesis statement.
Yeah.
250 words, more or less, one paragraph, and that will lead into the rest of your interview. So imagine you have your first page is going to have the title of your work. Then your introduction, one paragraph, 250 words, more or less. One or two paragraphs, I should say. And then lead into the sections, just as you have. Now the conclusion, think of in terms of being in the past, the present, and the future. So start with the past. I would again restate the thesis statement just like we did in applied linguistics, but talk one or two sentences summarizing your literature review. That would be the past. So what have other authors done? You can summarize that. Then lead into the present, which are your findings. What do you say about it? And then the future being, okay, how can someone else take your information and extend the research? What can they do to take it and build upon what you've done? And you can give some suggestions about what they could do for further research. So that would be essentially your conclusion. Again, approximately 250 words. That's at the very end of your document. Abstract. Abstract, between 150 to 250 words. One paragraph, essentially covering your entire paper. So imagine what you would have to include if someone wanted to know more about your research without having to read the entire document. That's the purpose of the abstract, to get more or less of an idea. So again, you're going to begin with the problem. You're going to talk about the method. You don't have to talk so much about the research necessarily, but I would introduce the problem in the abstract. The method, specifically participants, instruments, and the procedure. Very brief. You're not going to talk about all aspects, but try to include a little bit about the participants, the instruments, the type of study. It's a qualitative or quantitative study or mixed methods. The way you analyzed it, you used different coding system to code the information, and then the findings. One or two sentences about this research. The findings showed that this. And all of that's going to be included in the abstract. Different than the introduction. See the difference between the introduction and the abstract. So we don't want to mix or confuse those two types of text. Remember that the abstract is the only paragraph that does not include an indentation. So it's all the way to the left. Every other paragraph in your paper is going to have a half-inch indentation.
Okay.
So I created an announcement talking about that, and so you can refer to that if you need to. And that's more in terms of next week, but right now, this week, we want to try to finish the results and discussion section. Okay, so it's going to be approximately 2,250 words, so leave another 250 words, right, for your conclusion. So make sure you try to shoot for around 2,250 words for your results and discussion section.
Okay.
Alrighty?
Yes.
Alright, so then I guess we'll see you either later this week or next week for your tutoring session.
Okay,
Alright.
thank you.
Alright, you're welcome.